Next up, we have Terry Lynch. I saw him walk in. Terry's here. He's the president and CEO of Power Nickel. Power Nickel is a Canadian mining company advancing its high-grade nickel sulfide project in Quebec with a focus on supplying nickel for the growing battery metals market. Terry's also an advocate for pre-revenue junior exploration mining companies working with Sprott, trying to help the value of these shares not fall prey to short sellers. I don't think you're talking about that here, but I want to thank you for that.
All right, cool.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Let's all give him a great warm welcome. Thank you.
Good seeing you. Thanks again. Good afternoon, everyone. It's always a pleasure to come to Quebec City. It's one of my favorite cities in the country, so it's always such a beautiful spot. I could definitely see myself living here. We'll walk you through the Power Nickel story. It's a pretty interesting one. It's evolving. Obviously, with a name like Power Nickel, we obviously had something to do with nickel. And we still have a lot to do with nickel, but it's now becoming more of a polymetallic story, and that evolution is very exciting. We're not going to tell you anything we don't believe is true, but as with all investing, it's always important to do your own due diligence. Standard cap structure, I think for most junior mining companies, the one thing that's maybe different about Power Nickel here is our key shareholders own significant chunks of the company. We've invested significant capital, our own capital. Our top 5 or 6 shareholders own over 50%. The Lynch family is the biggest one there at 20%. We've put in a fresh $4 million over the last 24 months, going from 10% to 20% because of the NISC project. We really believe in it, and so I think it's, as an investor, I'm always comforted by seeing management and the people that know the project best writing their own checks. I'm going to walk you through sort of 5 reasons why we think it's sort of a compelling investment for Power Nickel. I'll walk you through them one by one. Give you a little perspective. When we started the project, we acquired a historic nickel resource, a nickel sulfide. 1% nickel was a very interesting sort of project, 3.1 million tons, and we've ramped that up to now it's probably north of 8. And it's sort of in that bottom left-hand quartile, is what we call NISC main. So that project is associated with ultramafic rock, and that's where the nickel sulfide ore body exists. So when we got the project, we have 46 square kilometers here, about a 14-kilometer strike length, property package. We mapped it, and one of the things we noted was about 5.5 kilometers to the northeast. We identified what we called at that point the Wildcat target, where it was ultramafic expression at surface, and it was correlated with some old EM anomalies that we had identified. And we thought to ourselves, okay, someday we're going to test that, and we did. We tested it about a year ago in April, and it was a winter target, meaning at that time it's sort of marshy, and you have to drill it when it's frozen. So we drilled it, and we're of course looking for more nickel sulfides, and lo and behold, we found this crazy PGM hole where we had almost 1 ounce of PGMs over almost 8 meters, pretty much close to surface, like at 60 meters. So it was like a shocking sort of discovery for us. And of course, unfortunately, we had to wait because it was a winter target. So we had to wait until January of this year to get back in there. So in January, we started drilling, and we just started hitting these crazy rocks. I published this picture, I think in sort of mid-March or something, and at the time we had no assays back on these 6 sets of drill assays, but we just knew they were super rich because it's all chalcopyrite, and of course, these became legendary holes. And by legends, I mean legends, like holes that nobody's ever seen, not in Canada, not anywhere. So we're getting recovery, 24% copper equivalent, over 14 meters. I mean, it's just insane. So these holes, there's a whole raft of them now, have basically happened in a chute. And this chute is sort of trapped, structurally controlled through 2 plates from surface. We've drilled it down to about 275 meters now. The width is about 225, but the true width of the real meat of the zone is about 100 meters. There's a bit of a mineable halo of 50, 75 meters on either side. Within that 100 meters, though, we're getting these epic results. We've had like 6 holes of more than 10 meters of 10% copper equivalent. So, that's, if you think about it, in terms of 1 gram gold being $60 rock. This is again with all the disclaimers and stuff, would be $1,200 rock, so like 20 times more theoretical value. So that's very interesting from a exploration discovery perspective. It's certainly not anything anybody's ever seen really anywhere in the world, especially the copper, high-grade copper with high-grade PGMs. It's just an anomaly. It's interesting, when we made the initial discovery, my son, who's a CFA and a smart mining investor, he's actually in MinTwits on Twitter, and he's one of those guys. And he sends me a video. He said, "Dad, you got to watch this video. It's this very famous Australian geologist, Dr. Steve Beresford." And he said, he's got this thing. He's on a quest to find the next big polymetallic mine, and he's found a bunch of them already. And he said, it's like he's talking about NISC, but of course he doesn't know about us. He said, you should try and get a hold of him. So I reached out, I watched the video, and sure enough, it was, it's not like watching Laverne and Shirley, but if you've got a lot of money in a deal and it's talking about stuff that you're getting educated on, it was entertaining to me. So I reached out to Dr. Beresford through LinkedIn, and I sent him, some nickel assays that we had, and obviously the PGM hole that we had. And I said, "Look, I watched your video. I'm sure you're busy as hell, and you have never heard of Power Nickel, but I said, I think we got one of these things." So he gets back to me in a couple of days. He says, "Well, you might, so we started chatting, and then basically he said, "What's your plans?" I said, "Well, unfortunately, it was a winter target." So I said, we're going to try and get back in this fall if it gets dry, but most likely we won't be able to get in until January. So that's what turned out to happen. We couldn't get back until January, but then in January, obviously, we started to drill, and it was like shooting fish in the barrel. I mean, we drill a hole, bang, we hit it. Drill another one, bang, we hit it. So it was like that. 15 of 16 holes hit. So obviously, as we were generating these great recoveries in terms of the assays and whatnot, we contacted Steve again and said, "Hey, take a look at these pictures, take a look at the assays." And he said, "We better hop on a phone." We did a technical review with our VP of Exploration. And I said, "Look, Steve, I don't have an analogy for you. I mean, it's not like Voisey's Bay because we've got the precious metals, and it's not like this gold deal because we've got the nickel and the copper." And he said, "You know what? I know what it's like." I said, "Okay, what's that?" He says, "It's like Norilsk." Now, Norilsk, for the the people that don't know, is the world's most valuable mine. It's the big Russian mine. So, and I said, "Wow." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Look, I'm not saying you got the next Norilsk, but he said, if you did, it would start like this." So in his view, if you look at that picture on the screen, that 5.5 kilometer corridor, he believes better than 50% chance that nickel sulfide ore body is connected to the line zone. Second possible theory is that somewhere between the NISC main and the line zone, there's a second nickel sulfide ore body that's unconnected to NISC, but it's providing the oven to provide the fluids that have flown up here. There's interesting, in the recoveries of our assays in the line zone, we're getting a lot of high-grade nickel as well. So that's why he believes this is sort of fundamentally, like in a lot of polymetallic deposits, the nickel sulfide acts as the oven, and some sort of hydrothermal activity, they're not really quite sure, comes up, and it basically gathers up the copper and the gold and the PGMs, and almost like in a geyser, it just pulses full of energy and releases these fluids and creates these very high-grade zones. And he said, look, in his experience in all the polymetallics he's done, you'll find these zones, and they'll be super rich copper ones, they'll be super rich PGM ones, they'll be super rich precious metals ones. He predicts there'll even be a super rich zinc one. He asked me, he said, how many ounces of gold does Norilsk have? And I said, I had no clue. I didn't know they had any gold. He said, 20 million ounces. So he said these polymetallic discoveries, can be amazingly rich. So for us, obviously in the last 6 weeks, our stock's tripled, which is great in this marketplace. But honestly, we're cheaper now than we ever were because, if you look at the potential value of this polymetallic discovery, you look at what's happening for Bravo Mining as an example, they're 400 million market cap, we're 100 now. I think we're very, very early on this Lassonde curve on the discovery age. And there's a lot more to us than even this. So let's learn a bit about that. Obviously, the nickel sulfide package that we started with, we had 7.1 million tons of almost 1.13% nickel EQ. A nice number, getting better at depth. We think we've added more to that, and there's a lot more to be found. Within the nickel sulfide world in Canada, high-grade nickel sulfides, Voisey's Bay, 22 million tons, or pardon me, Lynn Lake, 22 million tons, Voisey's Bay, 140. We always saw ourselves being somewhere in between there. Obviously, if that 5.5 kilometer strike length is true, we could blow by 100 million tons. We'll see. We have to obviously do the work and discover that. One of the things that we did a little bit differently is we got approached by these guys, CVMR, and CVMR is a nickel refiner. They're the largest private nickel refiner in the world. 18 plants around the world. They're building another 3. They make nickel powders, among other things, but that's what they're most famous for. And their client list is literally the who's who of the Fortune 100. They have 2 joint ventures with the Department of Defense. The American $100 bill is made with their nickel nano powders. So it's a pretty impressive company. So they're in doing a feasibility study right now on the nickel sulfide project. We're advanced quite a bit. In fact, I'm going to Korea with them on Thursday, or Friday actually, this Friday, for a week's worth of meetings with the Korean Battery Metal Complex, the third set. And we're going with nickel powder that we've made from NISC. So the interesting thing about nickel powder is, nickel concentrate, you get $20,000 a ton. Nickel powder, you get $60,000 to $80,000 a ton. So that's the business you want to be in. Nickel, for a lot of people, is a 4-letter word. I think it's a 6-letter word. I think, this is proof. I think, Mark and his team did a great job of getting Samsung to invest in Canada Nickel. And for sure, Samsung had cheaper alternatives for nickel. But they invested because they believe that they need to have North American nickel to be compliant with the Inflation Reduction Act. And we believe that too. We think, people are going to look at this as sort of, I compared nickel to uranium in January 2020. Nobody wanted it. By December, everyone wanted it. So I think nickel's one of those unsung heroes that you should be watching in your portfolio. Obviously, we're here in Quebec, and it's a tremendous province. They've done some amazing things, that make it attractive for mining. We think it's the world's best spot to be an explorer. We like it for 3 big reasons. The infrastructure. In our case, we're located just south and a bit east of James Bay, just outside the town of Nemaska. We're located off of Route North. Hydro-Quebec's literally across the street. There's a regional airport in the city, and of course, it's the home of the Cree government. I was just up there this week meeting with the Chief Jolly and the council and the community. Tremendous people to work with. The Quebec government's done a great job of working with the First Nations and getting them to understand mining and how they can benefit the community. And then, of course, the fiscal terms. We've done several deals where we've gotten more than double our money. Like last one I think we did was around Christmas time, where Rob McEwen and the Lynch family each put $500,000 in, and we got $2 million in funding. Stock was 23 cents with the funding at 50 cents. So that's tremendous from a shareholder dilution perspective. It also works on the development side. So you got 30% tax credit from the feds, up to 25% from the province. So if you find a mine here, you can develop it as well. This is one of the slides I like to sort of show. It's a little out of date, but not so much. I mean, basically shows us against other high-grade nickel sulfides around the world, and shows that we're the cheapest. Yet, and that was before the Lion discovery. Whereas if you look at like Bravo Mining with 400 million market cap, you can see when I say we're still super cheap, it's by relative comparison. Obviously, the environment's a big part of things. We think we're going to deliver the world's first carbon-neutral nickel mine, thanks in large part to Hydro-Quebec and the fact that we have an ultramafic deposit. We're using some pretty cutting-edge technology. This is the ambient noise. It's basically super-sensitive seismic. This is what it looks like. It allows you to create a 3D visualization at depth, and it's helped us find both the advanced Lion zone and to find more at NISC Main. We're also doing a spin-off. My introducer talked about the short problems. One of the ways to maybe deal with the naked shorters, and we've got a lot of naked shorters in Power Nickel stock. We think it could be 60 million plus shares short, is to do a private spin-off. So we're doing a private spin-off that'll be announced at our annual meeting in July. Last thing to talk about is we got a royalty that we have with Teck. We're in the process of selling that. It's just another, probably chip in $5 million, which is less dilution for NISC. And if you believe in what we've got at NISC, you want to do that. How we got here, great team at GeoVector has helped us along, our board as well. And I'm running out of time, but I think that's a pretty compelling wrap on why Power Nickel's one of the I think compelling investment stories out there on the market today. Thanks very much for your time. Have a great day.